The execution chamber smelled like bleach and regret. Officer Maya Rodriguez stood outside the reinforced glass, her hand trembling against the cold steel rail. Inside, strapped to a gurney, was prisoner 47829, Marcus Webb. The man who'd changed everything. The man whose last words were about to either destroy her career or save an innocent life. Through the glass, she could see the warden checking his watch. The chaplain whispering final prayers. The 4-line already inserted, waiting for the lethal injection that would stop Marcus's heart in approximately 7 minutes. 7 minutes between life and death. 7 minutes between justice and murder. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. 3 months earlier, Maya had been Dallas PD's Golden Girl. Decorated officer. Spotless record. 16 commendations in 8 years. The kind of cop they put on recruitment posters. The kind mothers pointed to and told their daughters, "See? You can be anything you want to be." Then Captain Voss happened. "Rodriguez, you're being transferred." She'd looked up from her desk, coffee mid-sip, case files spread before her like puzzle pieces finally coming together. The Henderson case, 3 months of work, finally solved. Transferred? "Sir, I just closed the Henderson case. Huntsville maximum security. Effective immediately." The bullpen went silent. Keyboards stopped clicking. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone knew what Huntsville meant. Career graveyard. The place where they sent cops who asked too many questions or saw too much. The place where promising careers went to suffocate behind concrete walls and razor wire. Maya had done both when she'd stumbled onto irregularities in the evidence room. Irregularities that pointed straight to Voss's inner circle. Money that didn't add up. Evidence that disappeared. Cases that went cold when they should have burned hot. "This is retaliation," she'd said, voice steady despite the fury burning in her chest, despite every instinct screaming at her to flip the desk and demand answers. Voss leaned back in his leather chair, smile cold as a Texas winter. "This is reassignment. Take it up with HR if you have concerns." He slid the transfer papers across his desk. "Unless you'd prefer to resign? I hear private security pays well." The threat was clear. Play ball or get buried. 2 weeks later, Maya walked through Huntsville's gates for the first time, the Texas sun beating down like judgment itself. The prison rose before her like a concrete tombstone, housing over 2,000 souls society had deemed irredeemable. The walls stretched toward the sky, topped with spirals of razor wire that glinted in the afternoon light like steel promises. No one leaves. She'd stood in the processing area, trading her service weapon for pepper spray, her badge number for a new identity, Correctional Officer Rodriguez. The demotion stung worse than the transfer itself. "First time in the big house?" asked Officer Chin, a 20-year veteran with tired eyes and a weary smile. "That obvious?" "Always is. Word of advice? Don't try to save anyone here. This place isn't about rehabilitation. It's about warehousing. The sooner you accept that, the easier it gets." Maya told herself it was temporary. Keep her head down. Do her time. Get back to real police work. She'd serve her sentence behind these walls just like the inmates, counting days until freedom. Then she met Marcus Webb. He wasn't like the others. While inmates shouted obscenities or made crude gestures as she passed their cells, while they threw food trays and banged on bars and reminded her daily that respect was a luxury they couldn't afford, Marcus sat in his cell reading, always reading. Philosophy, history, children's books that seemed wildly out of place in a maximum security prison. The first week, she'd noticed the books but said nothing. Professional distance. Chen's advice echoing in her head. The second week, she'd caught titles. The Little Prince. Where the Wild Things Are. Charlotte's Web. The third week, Curiosity One. "You're new," he said one day during her rounds, not looking up from his book. "Oh, The Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss." Maya paused. Protocol said minimal interaction. But something in his voice, cultured, weary, profoundly sad, made her stop. "Officer Rodriguez," she replied curtly, hand instinctively moving to her pepper spray. Marcus Webb. But you already know that. He finally looked up, and Maya saw something in his eyes that didn't belong in a place like this. Hope. Not the desperate, clawing hope of a man filing endless appeals, but something deeper, quieter, more resigned. Do you believe people can be wrongly convicted, Officer Rodriguez? That's not my concern. I'm just here to keep us locked up. I know. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Funny thing about innocence. It's the loudest thing in a room full of guilty men, yet no one hears it. It screams and screams until it loses its voice, and then everyone assumes silence means guilt. Maya walked away, his words echoing in her mind like a song she couldn't shake. Over the following weeks, she couldn't stop noticing Marcus Webb. While other inmates traded contraband or picked fights, while they formed gangs and drew invisible territory lines across the prison yard, Marcus kept to himself. He received no visitors, made no calls, never went to the yard. Just read those books, especially the children's ones, with an intensity that bordered on religious devotion. She watched him mouth words as he read, as if practicing bedtime stories for an audience that no longer existed. Curiosity got the better of her. During her break, she pulled his file. Marcus Webb, age 38. Convicted of armed robbery and murder of convenience store clerk Eduardo Martinez. Sentenced to death. Appeals exhausted. Execution scheduled for October 15th, 8 weeks away. But something felt wrong. Maya had read hundreds of case files in her career, and they all had a rhythm, a narrative flow that made sense even when the crimes were senseless. This one didn't. The conviction rested on a single eyewitness, a testimony that had more holes than a screen door. No physical evidence linked Marcus to the scene. No fingerprints. No DNA. No weapon. His public defender had been disbarred 2 years after the trial for gross incompetence, having juggled over 200 cases simultaneously. The timeline didn't work. The prosecution's theory required Marcus to commit the robbery, dispose of the weapon and his clothing, and appear across town at his mother's house, all within 17 minutes. Physically impossible. Maya had seen enough wrongful conviction documentaries to know the pattern. Poor defendant. Overworked lawyer. System moving too fast. Justice as assembly line. But this was real life, not Netflix. This was a man who would die in 8 weeks. You've been reading my file. She jumped, nearly dropping her tablet. Marcus stood at his cell door during evening rounds, that same knowing look in his eyes. I do my job, Maya said defensively, her cheeks burning. I didn't kill Eduardo Martinez. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was commenting on the weather. I was picking up my daughter from chemo treatment when it happened. St. Christopher's Hospital, Pediatric Oncology, 4th floor. But the hospital lost the sign-in records in a computer system migration, and my daughter. His voice cracked for the first time. She died 3 months before the trial. Leukemia. 8 years old. The air left Maya's lungs. She'd read about his daughter in the file, a footnote barely mentioned. Defendant was a single father, as if that somehow made him more or less guilty. Her name was Sophie. Sophie Grace Webb. Marcus's hands gripped the bars, knuckles white. She loved butterflies and believed her daddy could do anything. That he was a superhero who could fix everything broken in the world. His laugh was hollow. Some superhero couldn't even keep his baby girl alive. Mr. Webb, I promised her I'd take her to the monarch butterfly sanctuary in Mexico when she got better. We were going to release a butterfly together, one for every chemo treatment she survived. 23 butterflies. She counted every single one, wrote their names in a little notebook. Courage. Victory. She named them all. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Professional distance. Professional distance. She died believing I'd keep that promise. And I will. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her step back. That's why I need your help. I can't help you. I'm just a cop who got transferred here for asking questions someone didn't want asked. Yeah, guards talk. Inmates listen. "We're invisible to you people, which means you say things around us you shouldn't." He pulled out a worn photograph from between the pages of his book, a little girl with a bright smile and a bald head, holding a stuffed butterfly. "I'm getting executed in 60 days, Officer Rodriguez. This is my last request. Not my last meal or my last words. My last real request." Maya should have walked away. Should have reported the conversation. Should have followed every rule in the book that had governed her entire career, every regulation that had kept her safe and sane and successful. Instead, she whispered, "What do you need?" What happened next would break every regulation she'd ever sworn to uphold. Marcus explained his plan over the next several visits, always during evening rounds when the other guards were changing shifts, when the cameras had blind spots, when whispered conversations could stay whispered. Simple. Impossible. Insane. He wanted Maya to take Sophie's ashes, which his mother had been holding for years, unable to part with them, unable to fulfill Marcus's promise from behind bars, and release them at the Monarch Butterfly Sanctuary during their annual migration season. The monarchs would be arriving in 6 weeks. His execution was scheduled for 2 weeks after that. But there was more. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank in Dallas. Box 847. The keys with my mother. Inside is evidence, real evidence that proves I didn't kill Eduardo Martinez. But it also proves who did. Maya's stomach dropped. "Why didn't you use this at trial?" Marcus's laugh was bitter and sharp. "Because the man who actually killed Eduardo Martinez? His brother is a detective. You're Captain Voss." Everything clicked into place. The transfer. The buried evidence. The rushed conviction. The career graveyard. Voss's brother, Derek, was the eyewitness who identified me in a lineup. He killed Eduardo Martinez during a drug deal gone wrong. Eduardo was dealing, Derek was buying, price went up, Eduardo pulled a gun, Derek pulled faster. Then Derek pointed the finger at me, a black man in the wrong place at the wrong time. The perfect scapegoat. Maya's mind raced. "How do you know this?" "Because Derek bragged about it to his girlfriend. And his girlfriend's brother was my cellmate for 2 years before he got transferred. Told me everything before he left. Told me where to find the proof, security footage from a traffic camera 2 blocks away that the police never found. Eduardo's real phone records showing texts with Derek about the drug deal. Bank records showing Derek depositing $5,000 cash the day after Eduardo died. This could destroy my career," Maya breathed. "This could save an innocent man's life. Maybe not mine. I've made peace with that. The system doesn't like admitting mistakes, especially capital mistakes. But it could stop Voss from burying anyone else. It could mean Sophie's death wasn't the only thing I failed at." The weight of his words settled on Maya's shoulders like a physical thing. "If you release Sophie's ashes, my mother will meet you there. She has the key to the safety deposit box. But she won't hand it to just anyone. She's been burned too many times by lawyers who promised help and delivered nothing. She'll need proof that I trusted you. That I told you about the butterflies. About Sophie's names for them. I could be arrested. Disbarred from law enforcement forever. You could. Or you could live with knowing you had the power to expose the truth and chose comfort instead." Marcus held up the photograph of Sophie. "She was 8 years old, Officer Rodriguez. She believed in superheroes. She believed her daddy was one. Maybe you could be one too." The next 3 weeks were torture. Maya researched everything during her off hours. Found inconsistencies in the trial transcripts that any competent lawyer should have caught. Located the hospital where Sophie had been treated, discovered they'd been sued for lost records in multiple cases, a pattern of negligence that had destroyed lives. Found Eduardo Martinez's family, who'd never believed the official story, who said Eduardo was terrified of someone but wouldn't say who. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sophie's face in that photograph. Saw Marcus reading children's books in a cell, practicing for a daughter who would never hear them. She'd posted on social media, carefully, anonymously from a burner account. What would you do if you knew someone was innocent but saving them meant breaking every rule? The responses flooded in within hours. Thousands of people weighing in. The post went viral. Some called her a hero. Others called her a criminal. The debate raged. People shared stories of wrongful convictions, of family members lost to a broken system, of choosing between law and justice. But it was one comment that stuck, that she screenshotted and looked at every night. Rules are meant to protect people. When they start protecting corruption instead, they're not rules anymore. They're chains. With 2 weeks until Marcus's execution, Maya made her choice. She took personal leave. 2 weeks she'd been saving for a vacation she'd never taken. Drove 16 hours straight through the night to the Monarch Butterfly Sanctuary in Mexico, stopped only for gas and bad coffee and the gnawing fear that she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Met Marcus's mother, Eleanor Webb, a woman aged beyond her years by grief, with eyes that held the particular pain of outliving your grandchild and watching your child await execution. They didn't speak much. Words felt insufficient. Together, they released Sophie's ashes as millions of orange wings filled the sky, the annual migration in full spectacular display. The monarchs covered the trees so completely they looked like they were breathing, alive with color and movement. 23 butterflies for 23 chemo treatments. Eleanor whispered each name as she released a handful of ashes. Hope, courage, victory, faith, strength, justice, freedom, wisdom, trust, wonder, spirit, truth, forever, boys. Sophie. Mrs. Webb handed her the key afterward, tears streaming down her weathered face, her hands shaking. He's a good man. He was a good father. The best father. Please don't let him die for something he didn't do. The safety deposit box contained everything Marcus had promised and more. Photos, audio recordings on an old cassette tape, bank statements showing payoffs, text message printouts, security footage on a thumb drive, evidence that Derek Voss had killed Eduardo Martinez over a drug debt, then manipulated his brother's position to frame Marcus Webb. It was meticulous, devastating, irrefutable. Maya sat in that bank for an hour, holding the future in her hands. She could walk away, pretend she never saw it, keep her career, her pension, her comfortable life, return to Dallas eventually, play the game, survive. Or she could burn it all down for a man already marked for death, for a system that needed to be exposed, for a little girl named Sophie who'd believed in superheroes. She thought about Sophie naming her chemo treatments like they were butterflies. About Marcus reading children's books in a cell because it was the only way he could still be a father. About every person the system had failed because good people chose comfort over courage. She uploaded everything to every media outlet simultaneously. Local news, national news, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, every major newspaper, social media. The story exploded like a bomb. Hashtag Justice for Marcus trended worldwide within hours. Legal experts weighed in. Civil rights organizations mobilized. The governor's office was flooded with calls. Protesters gathered outside Huntsville, outside the Dallas PD, outside Captain Voss's house. The evidence was too damning to ignore, too public to bury. 2 days before the execution, the governor issued a stay. Federal investigators swarmed Huntsville and the Dallas PD. Captain Voss and his brother Derek were arrested on national television, Derek in handcuffs screaming about frame-ups while his brother stood silent, finally caught. But Marcus's fate still hung in balance. A stay wasn't freedom. It was just borrowed time. Which brings us back to the execution chamber, except this isn't an execution anymore. The stay came through. The chamber is being decommissioned for cleaning. And Maya is visiting Marcus in a normal cell, pending full exoneration, watching as lawyers and advocates and journalists swarm the prison. "You did it," he said, voice thick with emotion he no longer had to hide. Sophie's promise. The truth. Everything. "We did it," Maya corrected. "You never gave up. You kept fighting even when the system buried you." "No," Marcus shook his head, And for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled, really smiled. Most people wouldn't have risked what you risked. Most people follow rules even when rules are wrong, even when rules protect the guilty and punish the innocent. You chose justice over comfort. That's rare. That's heroic. Maya felt tears fall freely now, no need for professional distance. Sophie would be proud of you. She'd be proud of us both. 3 months later, Marcus walked free. Fully exonerated. The evidence had unraveled a corruption network that went back years. Dozens of cases were being reviewed. Lives were being reconsidered. The Voss brothers faced federal charges. The Dallas PD was under investigation. Maya never got her Dallas PD job back. She didn't want it. The system that had tried to bury her, that had transferred her for asking questions, that had nearly let an innocent man die, she wanted no part of it. Instead, she started a nonprofit, the Sophie Webb Foundation, dedicated to investigating wrongful convictions in Texas. Marcus helped run it, along with Eleanor, using Marcus's settlement from the state to fund operations. They worked from a small office in Austin, walls covered with photos of the exonerated and the still fighting, with butterfly artwork that Sophie had made during her treatments, with case files of people who claimed innocence and deserved someone to listen. On the anniversary of Sophie's death, they returned to the sanctuary together, releasing butterflies into the Mexican sky. This time, not as prisoner and guard, but as partners in the fight for justice. This time with Eleanor beside them, finally able to smile without pain crushing her chest. "She'd be proud of you," Maya said, watching the monarchs dance against the blue sky. "She'd be proud of us both," Marcus corrected. "You kept my promise when I couldn't. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. You gave me back my honor. You gave Sophie's death meaning." As the butterflies soared higher, Maya realized something profound. The system had tried to bury them both. A corrupt captain had sent her away thinking she'd stay quiet, thinking career preservation would trump conscience. A corrupt detective had framed an innocent man thinking no one would care about another black man behind bars, another statistic, another forgotten life. They'd both been wrong. Because sometimes, the last request of a condemned man is the first step toward justice. And sometimes, a by-the-book cop has to break every rule to do what's actually right. Sometimes the system meant to protect us becomes the thing we need protection from. The truth doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs someone brave enough to let it out. Someone willing to risk everything because silence has a cost too. A cost measured in innocent lives and dying promises and little girls who name their pain after butterflies. Maya watched Marcus laugh, really laugh, for the first time, free and clear and alive in a way that prison could never allow. She thought about the execution chamber she'd stood outside, about how close they'd come to ending an innocent life, about all the times they hadn't been close enough to stop it. The work wasn't finished. The Sophie Webb Foundation had 50 active cases. 50 more people claiming innocence. 50 more chances to get it right. But today, under the Mexican sky with butterflies dancing overhead, Maya allowed herself to believe that sometimes the good guys win. Sometimes justice prevails. Sometimes keeping a promise to a dying 8-year-old changes everything. Sometimes breaking the rules is the most righteous thing you can do. What would you have done in Maya's position? Would you have risked everything for a stranger's innocence, or played it safe? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and I want to hear your story. Have you ever had to choose between following rules and doing what's right? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. It's free. Hit the notification bell to know when we drop new videos. Let's keep this conversation going, because stories like Marcus and Maya's are happening right now, in prisons across countries.